Hello everybody, welcome to my little podcast on the fibre arts and related matters. It is Saturday the 6th of January 2018. Gosh, that's first time I've had to say 2018 on my podcast. So I hope you've all had a lovely holiday over the Christmas period and the New Year, and that I know everybody will be back at work now, and I hope you're all fighting fit and raring to go with new vigour and determination to achieve even more in the coming 12 months than we've achieved together over the last 12 months. For those of you following the old calendar, today is the Feast of Epiphany, so a very happy Epiphany to you. And for those who are following the new calendar, it will be Epiphany tomorrow, and so I wish you a very happy Epiphany for tomorrow. I follow the old calendar myself. I understand the modern world and the pressures on daily life, but I honestly don't really understand why we need to transfer feast days to the nearest Sunday. Ascension Day is the 40th day after Easter, and now it's the 43rd day after Easter, and the Epiphany is the 6th of January, and now it's going to be the 7th of January. I don't really, have to confess, don't really understand that. I don't think it's a major imposition to ask people to go to church twice in 2 days. It's a personal view, but I just thought I would mention it because, why not have a bit of controversy to start the week? Anyway, that's all by the by. So a very happy Epiphany for those of you who celebrate whichever day you celebrate on. My name is Jared, or Peter, or Boniface. I live in Abingdon-upon-Thames in Oxfordshire in the south of England with my two cats, Toby and Bunty, who are both sitting at me, looking at me at this moment in time, so I think we'll probably be making their usual appearance. It's amazing. They will leave me completely alone unless I sit over here and start talking to my phone, and hello Bunty, at which point they immediately need to be part of what's going on. So there we are. So to kick straight off, I don't have any finished objects. That's not a particular surprise to me because as I said last week, I'm not starting anything new at the moment. I'm going to be finishing everything that I've currently got on the go. And most of the things I have on the go are quite large projects that are going to take several weeks, some of them longer, to complete. So I have been making good progress on a couple of items, but I'm not going to talk about any of them at this moment in time, simply because I've talked about them fairly recently, so you already know what I've got on the go, as it were. I'm hoping I will have something finished for you next week. I'm pretty close to finishing on one object, which I think I will have finished by next week, so we're making good progress. Not helped, this sounds terrible, really not helped by the fact that I have friends who do insist upon seeing me. It's very inconvenient. What with work and friends, my crafting time is being cut to the bone at the moment. But anyway, of course, I'm always very, very happy to spend time with friends and family. I haven't been up north to Salford yet for Christmas. As I say, before Christmas I had a bit of a... Well, I was a bit concerned I might have an infection, so I didn't want to go to Salford to see my mother because with her being 80 this year and suffering from Alzheimer's and heart failure, an infection could be quite a serious matter for her, so I decided I would leave it until after the new year. So probably in the next couple of weeks I will pop up and see my brother and my mother, which I shall look forward to doing. Sorry, I'm wearing white trousers and I have two black cats, so I have black cat hair everywhere. Anyway, so no finished objects, lots and lots of works in progress, but none of them particularly new. So I'm going to talk about acquisitions. Now, I know I said last week I wasn't buying anything else, and technically I haven't. Bear with me, all will be explained. I'm not sure that you'll necessarily accept the explanation, but all will be explained. I didn't mention a couple of things that I actually got. I think I got one of them before Christmas, and I forgot to mention it on the Christmas Eve podcast, and then I forgot to mention it on the New Year's Eve podcast as well. So it is a new line of cake that has been brought out. You may remember I'm making a crocodile stitch cowl for myself in the Katia paint cake, which is quite muted autumnal colours, which I think will suit my suit me as a man and suit my colour palette anyway, the kind of colours of clothes that I wear, particularly my camel hair coat, for example. Well, Katia have brought out a second line of cakes. Actually, they've brought out a third one as well, but I've not bought any of those because I've been true to my promise. And this is the silver paint. And as the name might suggest, it is a sparkle base. I've got my glasses somewhere. I did put them down with me over here so that I could pick them up and use them. I did, Bob, I promise you. There we are. So I'm not even going to try and read this label without my glasses on. There we are. It is a 78% acrylic, 19% wool, and 2% polyester mix. Which is interesting because that, by my calculation, comes... Sorry, 3%. I was going to say, because that only comes to 99%. It's a 3% polyester mix. Sorry, I thought that said 2%. It says 3%. That makes a lot more sense. So it's mostly acrylic, with some wool and some polyester for strength. And I suspect the sparkle base is polyester. And the colourway I've got is, wouldn't you know it, it's 105, whatever that means. I will show it to you. It's this beautiful, beautiful sparkle base. I saw this and I loved the greens and blues in it anyway. But with the sparkle, it looks almost like stars in the night sky. And I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to use it for. Well, that's not entirely true. I have a fair idea of what I'm going to use it for. But I will not be casting on or hooking on any new projects until I've finished all the ones I've got. So I may change my mind by the time I actually get round to using this. But it's such a pretty thing. I actually have this sitting on my bookcase above my desk, looking at me. So I'm looking at this, and it's actually just a very... I've noticed the Grocery Girls do it, and Yarn Hoarder did have it, and a few others that I watch. They have their kind of yarn wall behind them, and it looks really pretty. And I don't have quite that because I have most of my yarn in plastic containers with lavender bags to keep them smelling fresh and to stop moths getting in on them. But I do have one or two items which are sitting on the shelf looking at me, and this is one of them. It just is, it's so pretty, and that sparkle is just divine. It's a DK, I believe. I will just get my glasses back on and check. Some labels, it's always difficult to know which way around the label is until you start reading it. Let me just put it under the... That's better. They for 4 to 5 millimeter needles, so I'm guessing this is a DK weight. Does it actually say anywhere? No, it doesn't, helpfully. But with it being 4 to 5 millimeter needles, I'd have guessed it's a 3.5 to 4 millimeter hook, US size E, which I'm guessing, and US size 8s, 7 to 8s for needles. So I'm guessing that is the 4 to 5 millimeter. I think that's right. So yes, it's a DK-ish yarn, and it certainly feels no thicker than DK. So I really like the colours, the greens and the blues together in this, and this lovely dark green on the outside. In fact, if I pull the label down, you can see the dark green. It's a really nice colour. And I don't really go for greens very much. I like teals and turquoise, but I don't really go for green as such. And this is almost a sea-like quality green. It's a very pretty thing to have on the shelf. But just to reassure you, I didn't buy this now, since I said I wasn't buying anything more. I really am not buying anything more. However, today is I follow the extraordinary form of the liturgy. So the Old Latin Rite, the Old Tridentine Rite, and I therefore attend the Oxford Oratory Church in St Giles, Woodstock Road, next to Somerville College in the centre of Oxford, which is it's the parish for that part of Oxford, but they have a Vitus Ordo, the Old Order of Mass, every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. But they also are on major feast days like Epiphany, Christmas. They will have a high mass as well, so it's a sung mass. So I went there today. That was 11 o'clock, and I bumped into an old friend whom I've not seen for a couple of years, in fact, and they were just in Oxford because they were visiting family who live in Oxford. And so they have been following me they watch these videos and they follow me on Facebook and Instagram. So they've been aware that I have been bitten by the yarn bug, and they wanted to buy me a present. And it was both a birthday and Christmas present because I hadn't seen them this year. And we normally do exchange gifts. So his family live in Parktown, and Parktown in Oxford. The houses there, the single plot houses, are worth £5 million and above, which is about $6 or $7 million. So these are very, very expensive houses. This is a very wealthy family. And so we were in that kind of central north Oxford area. So it's literally just to the north side of the city centre. And there is a wool shop there, a yarn shop, the Oxford Yarn Store on North Parade Avenue, which caters to the kind of people who live in that particular area, and therefore is very much a luxury yarn shop. And he bought me a kit. Well, not a kit as such. I have a 5-colour shawl that I've been wanting to make, and he bought me the wool for it. So I didn't buy this myself. He bought this for me, so this doesn't count as an acquisition that I've paid for. So I'm still keeping my New Year resolution. But I will show you this because I was blown away by these yarns as soon as I saw them. They have a real jewel-like tone to them, and some of you may be familiar with them. And they are expensive, but they're not massively expensive. They're certainly not out of my pocket to have bought them myself, but they were a very generous gift. So this is the Malabrigo, which I'm sure you'll have heard about, which is baby silk packer lace, made in Peru. So it's baby alpaca and silk. 70% baby alpaca, 30% silk, and the silk content gives it a real sheen, a pearlescent sheen to it, and that really intensifies the jewel-like tone of them. So I spent probably a good 20 minutes with him actually choosing the colours, because they had a number of colours, but there were two in particular that really, really jumped out off the shelf at me. Sorry, I'm just rewinding one of them because it's become a little bit loose. And I wasn't sure that they were going to work, but we actually did. We were able to combine them into a range. So I will share them with you now. But I'll show you first of all the two colours that really jumped out at me, the two that I wanted. Unsurprisingly, this beautiful teal colour, which is actually called Tuareg, or Tuareg. I don't know how it's pronounced. Um, get my glasses back on. As soon as you wear glasses and take them off, it's very impossible to focus again. So the colorway is 098, and it's Tuareg. I'll just show you the label, and it's in the Malabrigo. So these are hand dyed, which means that they're slightly tonal as well. Not, I mean, they are solids, but there is a little degree of variation within the colorway anyway. But it is very important when you buy them to make sure that you buy sufficient quantity. If you're buying the same color, make sure it's the same lot when you buy it. So this beautiful teal, as I say, unsurprising, and this gorgeous magenta. And this colour is actually called hollyhock. I don't know why, but it is. It is, 148 hollyhock. I'll just put the card up there for you. Helps if I put it the right way around so that you can actually see it. Now, when I first saw the two colours, I thought it was going to have to be one or the other because I couldn't really see how I would get these two colours to work together. But I carried on looking and comparing and moving colours in and out because there was also a rather attractive Paris Night, I think it's called, which is a rather almost a navy blue, but not quite as dark as a navy blue, but has a hint of darkness about it. So it would be a summer's night in Paris kind of things, where the sky is a very dark blue, but not quite black. In the end, I didn't feel I was able to do that, but I was able to put together what I think works. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts to see whether you agree or not. But so this is it's a kind of gradient moving, and I have this lovely almost metallic grey, blue grey. It's called Poplar Morn 009, and then this lilac lavender colour, which is in fact called Periwinkle, which moves into this gorgeous pink, which is Light of Love, and then finally the magenta at the end. And I think those colours together like that actually do work together quite well. And I think it's probably pairing the teal with the grey, the bluish grey, and then having this pinkish blue, the lavender colour coming in next, that allows you to have what is actually quite an extreme combination of these two together. So, as I say, I was very overwhelmed almost by these yarns. They have to be the softest, smoothest, most sensual yarns I've ever had the pleasure to hold. If you can get hold of Malabrigo, I can thoroughly recommend it from the softness and just the desire to touch it. I've no idea how it's going to knit up. I do have in mind a shawl that I want to make with these, so I'm quite looking forward. But again, these are a gift. I didn't buy them now, and I won't be casting anything on for the foreseeable future. But this will be a summer project, I'm sure, and I'm really looking forward to see how this all works together once it's actually knit up into a shawl. I may crochet it. I'm tempted to. The reason I think I'll probably knit is because, whoops, a little bit of fluff there. Is simply because it's a lace weight yarn, and I've got two projects that I could do, two shawls that I have in mind, which includes a lot of lace, so holes, yarn overs, and all that kind of thing within them. So if anybody has any strong suggestion about a yarn, a pattern that I may not have thought about, I would be more than happy to hear from you. So if you've got any ideas of a 5-colour, they're all 50-gram hanks. So it's a 250 gram project. So it's quite a sizable. It's effectively 2.5 balls of wool of the 100 gram standard size, and being lace weight, it's there's a lot of yarn in there. So if you had any ideas as to a pattern, I would be more than happy to hear from you. But that was a very generous gift, and I'm very, very grateful. While we were in there, I did buy something for myself, which isn't wool. It was actually Pom Pom magazine. I am a it's okay. I am a subscriber to Rib magazine, which is very similar to Pom Pom, but for men. But this has got some. It's something about this size of booklet and the kind of paper that's used. It's very similar to Rib magazine, and it's a nice size to hold and to read, and the artwork is outstanding. So even if you don't make any of the things that are in these magazines, they are really very attractive. Rib magazine is a 6-monthly magazine. This is quarterly, so this is their autumn 2017 edition. And autumn colours are very much my preference anyway. This is, I think, I don't think the winter edition has yet been published. Don't quote me on that. I meant to buy this previously and just hadn't come across it anywhere, but it was in there today, so I just picked it up. So that's the yarn store in North Oxford, and it's a very expensive place. I mean, the things I got, as I say, they weren't massively expensive, but they were a lot more expensive than I would normally pay for standard everyday yarn. But sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of luxury in our lives, and those were it. So, other acquisitions. I do have a couple of other books that I've bought. I was given some Amazon vouchers for Christmas, and I put them to good work, and I bought 2 books with them. I've still got some left, but I'm not sure what else I need at the moment, so it's not burning a hole in my pocket. It will sit in my Amazon account as long as it needs to. Oh, one of the things to mention about Pom Pom magazine, actually, I should say, is that it comes with a nice little code in the front cover for importing the patterns onto Ravelry. And as I said to you last week, I'm trying to use Ravelry more as a resource for my crafting, so that I can keep notes of what I've done and people can see what I'm up to. So I just thought I'd mention that Rib magazine does the same thing, and I also bought a book last year, Minnesota 52, which was a privately printed book on patterns as well, and that also came with a Ravelry code to allow that. I'm having a drink today. This is port, so excuse me. I know I said last week that I don't drink in January. What I actually should have said was I don't drink in January except for feast days, because you must feast on a feast day. So I'm having a glass of port, which is a nice digestive to help with my large lunch that I had after I've been at church today with my friend. And the port, in fact, was a gift for Christmas by my boss, so that was very nice. So the second item, or one of the 2 books I bought, so the second book, as it were, that I'll be showing you today, is Crochet Home. This is a collection by Emma Lamb of 20 vintage modern crochet projects for the home. And they're vintage in the sense that it's granny square style, but very much brought up to date with modern colours. So you can see that it's quite an attractive cover, and the photography is very bright and sympathetic. It's not primary colour bright, but it's very cheerful and positive colouring. and you can make these flowers, for example, to make them into a garland for instead of bunting, I guess. Or there are these throws and cushion covers and the like. So there's quite a few little things in there, and I've got one or two things that once I've finished what I'm currently working on, I will be able to take up. But it's very nicely prepared. So it's got both written instructions and charts, so that you can see where you're going with various different patterns. So it caters for both sides, as it were. I'm rather taken, I have to say, I'm rather taken by this granny square quilt, which bed throw rather, which looks rather like a quilt, and it's been very cleverly put together. So there are one or two things that I would really quite like to do. So again, as much to give me inspiration for things that I might like around the house, or that I might like to give to people as gifts. Hello, Toby. Come on then. So that's another source for that. The other book I bought is a rather odd book in a way. It's more of a history of knitting book, but a specific history. Sorry, I've got cat hairs on that there. A specific history. It's called Knitting for Tommy. Knitting the Great War Soldier Warm, or keeping the Great War Soldier Warm. Sorry, I'm trying to read that backwards on the screen without looking at it. This is a very interesting book. It's full of adverts from the Great War period, for example, and has a written commentary going alongside it. I love this jumper, which is to be worn under the jacket of the uniform, but can also be used as a portable chessboard or drafts board when not being worn. So it's quite clever to cater for a number. Toby, get your head out of the bag. Honestly, what do you like? Right. The back of the book actually has photographic reproductions of the patterns. Unfortunately, because of the size of the publication, and I noticed this was actually pointed out on one of the reviews I read as well, because a smaller overall size was chosen, it's actually been photo reduced, so it's actually very difficult to read the patterns, even though the patterns are intact. Now, I'm not sure that it would, I mean, one has to remember that these patterns were being written for men and boys who were on the front line in trenches, and so it was more important that they be warm and dry as much as possible, rather than have any sartorial elegance. So, for example, there's this lovely hat and scarf all-in-one combo, which I'm not sure I would want to walk down the street wearing such a thing. Although if I lived in a very cold climate, I might be very pleased to. He does look rather sad for himself in that picture, I'm afraid. But there are some interesting ideas, and there are some really fascinating facts and statistics. I'll just, if you bear with me a second, I've got a couple that I highlighted just to mention. So, for example, during the First World War, the British Army issued new socks to men at the rate of 3 pairs every 6 months. Now, 3 pairs every 6 months doesn't sound like an awful lot of socks, and to each individual Tommy, 3 pairs in 6 months really isn't an awful lot of socks. During the 4 years of the First World War, that amounted to over 137 million pairs of socks. And even 137 million pairs of socks was woefully inadequate. And it was inadequate as much because the men spent a large part of the war standing in sodden trenches. And so the need to have a regular change to clean, dry socks in order to avoid trench foot, which was not only painful and debilitating for the soldier, but also depleted the front line force, because those soldiers with trench foot simply had to go to the medical facilities. So there's some really nice stories in here of pastors who gave their parishioners permission to knit during the sermon, and dinner parties where everybody took their knitting with them to the dinner party, including the Queen, who was very much at the forefront of promoting making clothes. And children and men were very much encouraged to knit for the front lines, and crochet as well. And people would be knitting on buses and in the cinemas, at music halls, wherever they were. So I just find that public celebration of knitting is quite a fascinating thing. And as I say, it wasn't so much about making things that were attractive to wear, it was about making things that were warm to wear. So that's balaclava helmets, scarves, gloves, socks, the puttees that are worn at the bottom of the trousers to keep the bottom of the legs free to move. So you'd wear them over your socks, over your trousers, almost like leg warmers down at the bottom and you'd need two for every soldier, because every soldier needs two, one on each hand. And I mean, even lovely diagrams of how to make knitting bags that you can take out into the street with you and do when you're standing in queue for shopping or wherever you happen to be. And I know that there are a number of patterns available today for people to have those over the arm knitting bags. There are just two other things I want to talk about. Clearly, the British had an advantage over the Germans in terms of having a wool supply. Germans were as much requiring warm and waterproof clothing. And one of the things that people would do, for example, is soak the finished knitwear in linseed oil and then iron it with brown paper, and this would effectively waterproof the clothing, or at least apply some waterproof clothing layer to the clothing. But with the Allied blockade of the Axis powers, it became difficult for Germany to get its hands on wool, and so by 1916, all wool in Germany and Austria was actually requisitioned by the government for producing uniforms, rather than able and available for people to make comforters for the troops. Whereas with New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, the British had significant access to lots and lots of wool. But the Canadians were at the forefront of knitting socks. So the city of Hamilton in Ontario sent 27,892 socks to the front in 1 month alone. That's just shy of 28,000 pairs of socks in a month. That's 1,000 pairs of socks every day in one city being made. Australia Comforts Fund, whose motto was "Keep the Fit Man Fit," produced 1,354,328 pairs of socks during the war. And it goes on and on. So there's some really fascinating bits and pieces in here. But knitting became something that everybody was encouraged to do, either for their own men at the front or for putting into packages for men who didn't have people to make comforters for them. I just want to find a little poem that was published in the Daily Mail, the newspaper. The Daily Mail, even then, was one of the nation's leading tabloid, well, it's pre-tabloid, but most popular daily newspapers. It's the second most popular newspaper produced in the UK even today. And I think it is here. So if you just bear with, sorry about this, I might edit a little bit of this out if it takes me too long to find, but there are some lovely cartoons. England expects that every woman this day will do her duty, for example. um, and it became, I think we mustn't underplay as well the sense that it empowered people, that people who perhaps felt that they were unable to contribute, that they were helpless in watching their men go off to war and unable to protect them, unable to actively take part in the same way, perhaps, for women who might have been so minded to have been active, if that had been permitted. It's fascinating that it could be such an empowering activity. So I really can't find this, which is a great shame. I was hoping I could. I thought it was right at the very beginning. Oh, it is. Sorry, it's right at the very beginning. Here it is. So this is a poem that was published in the Daily Mail in 1915, The Knitting Song by Jessie Pope. Soldier lad on the sodden ground, sailor lad on the seas, can't you hear a little clickety sound stealing across on the breeze? It's the knitting needles singing their song as they twine the khaki or blue, thousands and thousands and thousands strong, Tommy and Jack for you. Click, 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 how they dart and flick, flashing in the firelight to and fro. Now for pearl and plain, round and round again. Knitting love and luck in every row, the busy hands may be rough or white, the fingers gouty or slim, the careful eyes may be youthfully bright, or they may be weary and dim. Lady and work girl, young and old, they've all got one end in view, knitting warm comforts against the cold, Tommy and Jack for you. Knitting away by the midnight oil, knitting when day begins, lads, in the stress of your splendid toil, can't you hear the song of the pins? Clickety-click through the wind and the foam, it's telling the boys over there that every woolly that comes from home brings a smile and a hope and a prayer. Click, 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 how they dart and flick, flashing in the firelight to and fro. Now for pearl and plain, round and round again, knitting love and luck in every row. I just thought that was rather a nice sentiment from this. So it's a really very nice little book. It's very well written. It's a fascinating view on social history and a fascinating insight into how such a mundane, prosaic task as knitting could become such a powerful emblem of love and support for the boys, either on the high seas or on the front lines, and also of empowerment for the women and also the older men and the children left at home. So that's my other book that I've shared with you. I did actually go into Mason's this week, not Mason's wool shop, but Mason's fabric shop. They had the 25% off sale of Christmas fabrics and some other fabrics. So I took the opportunity to buy some rather nice, quite expensive Christmas fabrics, which, so this is the first one, which is beautiful, get it the right way up, is beautiful baubles in this lovely red baubles on a deeper red background, but highlighted in lots and lots of gold. And it is such a beautiful fabric, it really is. And the other one, which is equally beautiful, is a more blue effect, which is a winter snow scene of fir trees on hills. So I do know what I'll be making with those. I've got a couple of projects in mind, which I will be doing later in the summer for Christmas presents for people for next year. But I just took the opportunity because they were 25% off. These are actually quite expensive fabrics. They're quite good quality fabrics. So I took the opportunity to make the most of the 25% off. And just a little bit of an update for you. But I just bought some nice backing fabric as well, which is not for those, but it's for a couple of other projects that I've got in mind This is cotton and linen content, but it's quite a nice fabric. I got some pins for Otis, so he's now wearing his jewellery. I have to say the first pin I put in I was really quite upset by, but the rest of them went in quite easily. So he is a pin cushion and he sits very nicely next to my machine, and I'm really pleased with him and his jewellery. So there we are. So that is everything I've got to talk to you about today. I will, though, just point out a couple of things. First of all, I've put some new recordings on my other channel, my personal channel, which is my Audiobooks channel. And they are ghost stories by Montague Rhodes James, who was a Cambridge Don at the turn of the 20th century. He was a great medievalist. He travelled across Europe and was really well known for his erudition in medieval matters. But he was also a lover of ghost stories, and every Christmas Eve would tell ghost stories to those students and fellows who remained up at Oxford for the Christmas holidays. It's a much more modern phenomenon that people go away at Christmas. Not that long ago, it was much less common. And he eventually became provost of King's College, Cambridge, and then following that, provost of Eton College, until his death in the 1930s. And he is renowned for really being the English ghostwriter specialist, of quite dark and macabre tales as well, but short stories. So I'm recording individual ghost stories on there for you, and including an image related to each of the ghost stories that is mentioned by M.R. James in his writing. So for those of you who might be interested, it's that time of year when it's actually quite nice to hunker down to 25 minutes of ghost stories. So that's on my other channel. And I was going to talk to you a little bit today. I think I will. I was going to talk to you a little bit today about the Feast of Epiphany. I've mentioned previously that I'm slightly out of sync with the modern world in some ways. As a child, we never put Christmas decorations up until Christmas Eve, and so they didn't come down on the stroke of Twelfth Night. It wasn't something that my family felt needed. A lot of the bigger decorations did, simply because it was easy to put them away while my father was off, but there would be things like cribs and things left out really for much longer into the Christmas season than just Twelfth Night. And Twelfth Night has become a feast that people don't really understand, or don't really keep, and don't really understand what the significance of the wise men in the whole Jesus narrative, infancy narrative, is. So I thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about the liturgical shape of this part of the year and why it is the way it is. So we have Advent. Everybody understands Advent. It's a period of preparation for Christmas. And Christmas, the Christmas octave, everybody understands. That's when we celebrate Christmas Day every day, and we have parties, and it's all very jolly and positive. And then there's those few days after Christmas, after New Year, leading up to the 6th, where we're just waiting for the wise men to come, and then we put Christmas away. Well, that's not, strictly speaking, the Catholic understanding of Christmas. So the Advent and Christmas week things, yes, absolutely. Christmas week is a protected octave in the Catholic Church, so that every day between Christmas Day and New Year's Day, including Christmas Day and New Year's Day, is considered to be Christmas Day. It is a single day that lasts a week. The only other two octaves that do the same thing, the only octave that actually does exactly the same thing is the even bigger octave, which is Easter week, where Easter Sunday to Easter Saturday, which is the Saturday after Easter, not the Saturday before Easter, which is the Saturday of Holy Week and is therefore Holy Saturday. And this is an ongoing bugbear of mine as well, which no doubt I will talk to you about at Easter time. But Easter Day lasts from Easter Sunday to the following Sunday, Low Sunday, and the week after Easter week is known as Low Week simply because Easter week is kept at such a high level liturgically that it's actually quite nice to get back to normal by the time you're into Low Week. The other two major octaves that we still keep are the week before Christmas, when I've mentioned the O antiphons, the 7 bells to Bethlehem, the preparation for, and the great exposition of the titles of the Messiah. And the week before Easter, which is Holy Week, during which you have Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Palm Sunday, Holy Saturday, all that kind of thing, and the major events of the Passion. So you've got these 4 special weeks. And at Christmas, we've had the week before Christmas, we've had the week after Christmas. Then we have the week between the Christmas octave and Epiphany, which is building up to the arrival of the wise men. Now, why is this significant? Well, the wise men are the first non-Jews to be involved in the infancy narrative. Mary was a Jew, Joseph was a Jew, Jesus was a Jew, the shepherds were Jews, the innkeeper was a Jew. Everybody so far in the infancy narrative is a Jew. And they are the chosen people of God. And God could offer redemption, salvation to his chosen people, the Jews. But the arrival of the wise men, these 3 aliens from a long way away with their strange customs and practices, they represent the rest of the world. This is the moment at which the story of Jesus becomes the story of the whole of humanity and not just of the Jewish people. So it's, for those of us who are not Jews, this is a very significant day. This is our Christmas day. And in fact, in the Orthodox Church, historically, Epiphany is the more significant feast than Christmas Day. And it's probably because of that significance in the Orthodox Church that the Western Church has this superstition that all the decorations have to be put away by Twelfth Night, so that we're not celebrating Christmas when the Orthodox are celebrating Christmas, because we're not, they're strange and Eastern and odd. So there are lots of different layers going on here. And so Epiphany actually begins a kind of mini or reduced level Christmas season. So it's a kind of Christmas tide that isn't quite Christmas. So it's not full of festivals and feasts and parties and big liturgical events. But it continues on until the 2nd of February. And on the 2nd of February, we have a feast called Candlemas. And the significant feature of the 2nd of February is it is 40 days since the birth of Jesus, since Christmas Day. And the number 40 is very significant in Jewish practice, festivals, because the 40 years in the desert, 4 is the 4 points of the compass, 10 is a large number. It's also 5 and 2, and there are all kinds of mystical, Kabbalistic reasons for the mysticism of numbers. But 40 is a significant day, and a woman who has a child is considered to be ritually impure until a certain amount of time has elapsed since the birth of the child. And for a boy child in Jewish practice, that's 40 days. If it was a female child, it's 72 days. And so the 2nd of February is also known as the purification of Mary, meaning that she became able to take part in the ritual life of her community once more. And this is represented by her by Joseph taking her and Jesus to the temple and offering the 2 turtle doves as the redemption of his son, kind of thing. The blood sacrifice that redeemed his child from the blood curse of the Exodus. Um, the most profound part of the uh, presentation of Jesus in the temple and the purification of Mary is when Simeon takes the child in his arms and gives thanks to God, saying that he will be the light to the nations. So it's the bookend, if you like. He also goes on to say, of course, that Mary, a sword will pierce Mary's own soul too, um, which is kind of foreshadowing the utter desolation she must feel watching her son die on the cross on Good Friday, 30 plus years hence. But sticking with the light of the nations, this is bookending the Epiphany. So the Epiphany and the purification are bookends, really about the the fact that Jesus hasn't come simply to the chosen people of God, the Israelites. He's actually come for all the nations, for all the Gentiles. And so there is a major antiphon which is sung on Epiphany called Tribus Miraculis, and I'll just read it to you. I'll put a picture of it on here as well so you can follow it. But it's Tribus Miraculis onatum diem sanctam colimus, hodie stella magos duxit ad presepium, hodie vinum ex aqua factum est ad nuptias, hodie in Jordane a Ioanne Christus baptizare voluit ut salvaret nos, alleluia, which roughly translated is, today 3 miracles decorate the day that we celebrate. Today the star led the Magi to the stable. Today wine was changed from water at the wedding. Today in the Jordan Christ chose to be baptized by John for our salvation. Now, Tribus Miraculis, 3 miracles. What's miraculous about these 3 things? Well, first of all, Christianity and Judaism before it has always prided itself on not simply being a religion of faith, but a religion of reason and faith. That through natural reasoning you can come to acknowledge the existence of God, and through faith you're exposed to the actual revelation of the nature of God. The wise men are astrologers. Astrology is the ludicrous notion that stars billions upon billions of light years away that happen to look as though they're connected to each other from our perspective of the night sky, but are radically billions of light years apart from each other as well as away from us, that somehow these stars have an effect on what's happening here on Earth. And it is self-evident nonsense. And yet, God chooses to use astrology to help the wise men to find the newborn king, which is a miracle. It is showing that perhaps none of us have any right to say that our understanding is better than anybody else's, that God can't choose to use whatever means are necessary to lead people to himself. So that's the first miracle. The second miracle is John baptized Jesus in the Jordan. Now, surely that should be the other way round. Jesus is the Lamb of God. Jesus is the Holy One. Jesus is the unblemished sacrificial victim. John is just a human being like the rest of us. But Jesus, and it says in the antiphon, he chooses to be baptized. And by being baptized, he sanctifies baptism. He makes baptism holy so that everyone else can then be baptized. So it's an unnecessary, it's irrational for Jesus to be baptized, but that act of being baptized then makes the whole idea of baptism rational. And then finally, we've got the changing of the water into wine at the marriage feast of Cana. Now, there are 2 very significant things about the marriage feast of Cana. The first is that Mary basically says to Jesus, they've run out of wine. And Jesus' response is, well, what's that got to do with you or me? Now, that sounds both dismissive of Mary herself and dismissive of the married couple who would, and their family, who would surely face embarrassment if they ran out of wine. But Mary doesn't get angry with Jesus. She doesn't insist that he do as he's told, and she's his mother and all that kind of thing. She just turns to the serving men and says, do what he says. And he tells them then to go and draw water from the well, and they do, and it's miraculously turned into wine. So clearly, when Jesus says, what's that got to do with you? What have you got to do with me? He's actually answering the question. And Mary knows that he's going to answer the question. I spoke a couple of weeks ago that Jesus is consubstantial with the Father, that he, in his divine nature, he is the same divine being as the Father. That there aren't two divine beings, God the Father and God the Son. There is one divine being, God, who has two persons, the Father and the Son, and of course the Spirit as well, but we're leaving the Spirit to the side at the moment. So Jesus' substance as God is the same, identifiably and identically the same substance as the Father's substance as God. The same is also true of his human substance. His human substance is entirely the same as his substance from Mary. His flesh is directly from her flesh. There isn't another intermediary in between. Jesus' flesh is consubstantial with Mary's flesh. So what she have to him? Well, she has everything to him in his human nature. And that human nature that Jesus and Mary share is actually the same human nature that you and I share, and we share with them. We are all consubstantial flesh with each other. And so what's that got to do with you? What have you got to do with me? What's that got to do with them? Actually, what Jesus is saying in this miracle, and what Mary is leading him to show in this miracle, is that our shared humanity means that we have everything to do with each other. There isn't anything about us that isn't to do with each other. So he spared the blushes of the family. He ensured the happy celebration of the two becoming one in the marriage, and in the process demonstrated some powerful truths about what it is to be human. So today or tomorrow as Epiphany, it isn't just a kind of tagged on extra bit to Christmas. It is fundamentally our Christmas story. This is where we come in to Christmas. So I hope you and all your family have a wonderful Epiphany, and I look forward to speaking to you all again next time. So I think I will leave it there for now. I'm carrying on with the various projects, but again, if you've got any comments on what I'm talking about, if there's anything that I'm saying which you don't agree with or you think is unclear, please leave comments. Do get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to chat about these things. I'm only sharing my pitiful insights into religion. Then I'm always willing to listen and learn from other people's experience as well. So anyway, on that happy note, I will wish you and your families a very happy Epiphany, and speak to you all again next week. So for now, bye bye.